The latest version of Apple's iPad went on sale today, another big promotional push for the electronic giant that saw the inevitable queues of eager shoppers keen to snap up their latest offering. But there is a growing focus on what it takes to make these products. The company's code of conduct for suppliers insists all workers must be safe, fairly paid and well rested wherever they are in the world. But the BBC has spoken to workers who make iPad parts in one factory in China, who say they have little choice but to work excessively long hours. From Shanghai, the BBC's John Sudworth reports.
The broken bones and the burns are almost 3 months old, but still visible. These men and women were making parts for iPads when a cloud of aluminium dust exploded, the second such explosion in less than a year at one of Apple's Chinese suppliers. They worry they'll be scarred for life, they tell me. Apple proudly displays a code of conduct for suppliers on its website. It says factories risk having their contracts terminated if they're unsafe or if they treat workers unfairly. But alleged breaches of the code are easy to find. At the same Shanghai factory where the explosion took place, there are claims that the working week is often well in excess of the 60-hour maximum that Apple demands.
What's normal for people here? Most people work 7 days a week?
12-hour shifts are the norm, people told us. Days off are rare. In a statement, Apple said, "Every year we inspect more factories, going deeper into the supply chain and raising the bar for our suppliers. In 2011, we conducted 229 audits at supplier facilities around the world and reported their progress on our website." The factory itself denied that any employee works for more than 60 hours a week. Apple's slick brand image is at risk, of course, if it is seen to be failing to get suppliers to live up to the required standards. But on the day the new iPad is launched, consumers might also reflect on the difficult commercial reality now facing all the big electronics firms.
These unemployed labourers are at these factory gates in the hope of wages that many in the West would consider a pittance. But of course, if consumers do have moral qualms about pay and conditions in China, then they also want to continue paying rock-bottom prices for their gadgets.
Those who make those gadgets see little prospect of real improvement. Apple's code of conduct couldn't save He Wenwen from injury, nor has it won him more than the $700 compensation he's been given so far. John Sudworth, BBC News, Shanghai.
Well, despite the controversy, there's no denying that Apple and its competitors have fueled a world of innovation. But despite these advances, are too many being left behind? And is there actually a way to share the benefits of innovation more equitably? Well, that's the topic of Vijay Vaisithwaran's new book, Need, Speed and Greed. He joined me just a brief time ago. Innovation, obviously, we hear a lot talked about this, how important it is. But as well as creating jobs, it's also taken away from some jobs.
Well, certainly, the process of creative destruction, as the economist Schumpeter called it, is part of the innovation process. But I want to say that this is actually the most exciting time in many decades for innovation, really since the great Victorian age of invention, because we are at an opportunity to solve many of the world's most wicked problems with not just new technologies, but new business models and entirely new ways of doing things.
I mean, you're right in terms of we're obviously seeing this big change. Obviously, we've seen it in the music industry here in the United States, in the film business, further abroad. We're seeing in Africa sort of how mobile phones can be used. But it is very disruptive for many businesses, as you say, trying to find new business models.
Absolutely. I think what motivated me to write this book is that not only are we at a time when great opportunity is there, especially for the bottom billion, and the poorest among us are benefiting, but many in the middle classes in Britain, in America, in wealthy countries are being left behind. And part of what I try to explain is how we can extend the benefits by giving the skills, the new tools and rules of innovation, not just to those at the bottom or the very elites, but the middle classes who might have worked their entire lives at particular jobs and but don't have the access to the skills of the new 21st century ideas economy. I think this is the central political challenge that political leaders face in OECD economies.
But we go back in some ways to where we started, which is, okay, you give people the tools to sort of innovate, to create, but that doesn't necessarily create the kind of big industries we've seen, say, for example, the General Motors, the General Electrics. If you look at some of the new companies today, Facebook, it creates 2,000 jobs, but it's still not on the scale we've seen sort of in the industrial age.
I would challenge that assumption, actually. If you see that a number of technologies are not only rising exponentially, we're familiar with the internet, with software, but the big data revolution in cloud computing is about to transform many industries, genomics, proteomics, metabolomics. These are not only arriving, but they're converging. The clean energy problem, for example, might be solved by synthetic biology, a fuel, in a whole industry and set of fuels that didn't exist 10 years ago. And so just as we couldn't in 1880 predict the 20th century revolutions of the electricity grid, of the motor car and so on, we can't predict which path it will go, but this is an opportune time.
Very quickly, obviously you're based in China right now. I couldn't leave without asking you about China versus the US. Is this a race to see who can be the most innovative?
There is a great race, and that's quite exciting because innovation is not a zero-sum game. Just as Japan's rise 30 years ago didn't sink the United States or Britain, they were able to rise as well. A rising tide can lift all boats, but only if we keep open borders, open minds, and don't sink into, for example, trade wars. And also only if we patch the holes in our vessels first, meaning invest in education, infrastructure, the things that are the enablers of future innovation.